Hello, everyone. My name is Logan White, and today I'm going to be covering one of my favorite stories as a child, actually, or one of my favorite child book series, which is the Berenstain Bears. And this one in particular is the Berenstain Bears and the Spooky Old Tree. This is a series of books, a great many in number, actually, of books written by Jan and Stan Bernstein. They were originally published. This story was originally published in 1978, and it really features and focuses around a family of anthropomorphic bears, which are bears that kind of represent human attributes, and they're even dressed as humans, and they act like humans. They walk on two legs, and they're dressed in human clothes. And through them, we kind of are taught stories about life, and we are brought into their adventures as they're going through it. This book, in its very nature, is a picture book. It's not an illustrated book. It's the pictures themselves are really demonstrating and telling us the story of what's going on in this adventure, and the words are really just describing or accenting what's going on through those pictures. So the pictures are telling us most of the story. And as we go through this story, our focus point is going to be on these three bears, the three children of the mama and papa bear, as they're going out on this adventure. And so these are our three main characters, and through all the pictures of the book, you can see that the focus point is always on these three bears, and they're never out of the picture. Not even one is separated. They're all three together. So we're all brought into the adventure of these three bears. The font in this book is very simple. It's not distracting. It's not the focus at all of what's going on. The picture is really the focus of what's going on in the book. It is very simple, and it's large, and it's easy to read. And the language itself is very simple. And so children could read this by themselves even. And so it's geared towards that. And it even has very similar words that come up throughout the whole story, and even a similar word choices and format of it. So we see that in the very beginning of the book, we're focusing on three little bears, one with a light, one with a stick, and one with a rope. And just one page later and two pictures later, they repeat that again, describing the three little bears. And so that happens throughout the story as we are brought into the adventure of the bears in the spooky tree. The composition of these pictures is very dynamic. Um, it focuses in on these three bears. Sorry about that. But the pictures themselves and the framing of the pictures is very interesting in how it describes the story and what it means to us. So they use a mixture of shapes to frame what's going on in these pictures. A lot of squares, but there's also a lot of circles and semicircles. So a square picture like this one on the bottom of the page here really demonstrates to us that that's all that's going on in the story. We don't really think that there's much more going on outside of that picture. Our brains aren't instantly brought to imagine what's happening outside of the picture. But in other frames like this one, which is a semicircle, it kind of leads us to believe what's going on outside of the circle. It leads us to a more larger sense of adventure because there's so much more out there. In other words, when the square is there, we kind of just see what's going on there, and our minds don't picture what's going on outside of that. But when it's a circle or a semicircle, or there's an open spot to the square, we kind of imagine much larger space behind that. And so when they're going through the story, there's these semicircles, we kind of imagine a much larger part of the story. There's a much larger picture of what's going on than just what is in the square. And interesting enough, too, all the protagonists, the main characters, and what the bears face are bear-like in nature. They face even these armored looking knights, but they look like bears. And they even face a larger bear in and of itself later in the story. And so this is all brought in around the bears. And our point of view of this children's tale, of this adventure, is through a third person narrator almost point of view. We're not ever put behind the bears. It's always from the side that we're seeing the bears, of what the bears are doing or what's going on in the story. We're not really taken behind them or into like a first person point of view at all. So we're not really brought into as if we are a fourth member of the adventure. We're not like the fourth bear in the story, but we are brought into to observe the whole adventure and see what's going on with the bears, and we can see the whole picture that way. We can see everything that's going on, even the things that the bears can't see, or at least that the front bears can't see. As we see in the story, um, the bears are all getting caught up, but everything that's going on kind of behind them is starting to catch up to them, like the spiders going on behind them. And so we see the stuff that's happening in the background of the story that the bears themselves don't see. The color of this book is very interesting. The color is very dark, which is kind of counter what most children's books are, but this is focusing on this adventure that's kind of turned wrong. And so the theme of this is very spooky and gloomy, and that color palette represents that. As we can see, most of the colors are gray. There's a lot of shadows and darkness around the bears, um, except for the flashlight. The flashlight really represents the hope almost of what's going on in the situation. The flashlight is their source of strength and bravery because they can see what's happening there. But in the flashlight in and of itself is not like a pure light. It's kind of a yellowy, spooky light. Um, but everything that's happening behind the flashlight, everything that's happening behind the light, is where the bad stuff's going on in the story. And that's where, in the order of which the bears are getting scared, even there's three bears, but the one in front has the flashlight, and the stuff that's bad is happening behind the flashlight. So the bears slowly get spooked by what's going on, and so it starts with the very back bear, as he gets spooked, and then the next one, until it's finally the front bear, because the danger is not behind them. It's actually the bear that they woke up in the story who is in front of them. And so the flashlight really represents the hope in the situation. But another interesting thing about the color is that this is really represented as a dark place because it contrasts to where they came from. They came from home where it's safe, and we can see that the home is much lighter. They use a lot more natural and inviting colors like light blues and light greens, and it's very safe. It's daytime at home, but instantly when they get to this tree, it becomes darkness, and the only real source of light is from the flashlight itself. And when they return at the end of the story, when they're returning to the safety of home, even though it's darker all around them because it's nighttime, home still has this light from it, and it's still natural, and it's still inviting them back, and it's safe. And so the color palette in this really represents the safety of home and the contrasting of the safety of home to the danger of the adventure that they're on. The rhythm of this children's book is very fast paced, and it speeds up as the story goes along. And so it starts off with the bears just walking slowly, and the way we see this in the pictures is through the movement of the bears, and the way that this author demonstrates that is through movement lines happening behind the bears. And so when we start off, we see the bears, they're just walking. There's no movement lines. It's very slow. But by the end of the story, when they're running around and they're running away from the different dangers, we see a lot of movement lines behind them, indicating the speedy nature of them sprinting away, sprinting home. And as they get more and more scared, more of the bears are running away from what they see behind them. So we start off with just this one bear in the back who is scared, and we can see the movement lines behind him. And then the next page, we have the two bears with the movement lines, but the one bear in front is still comfortable and he's not afraid. But there's a natural of one bear is scared, so one bear is running. Then two bears are scared, so two bears are running. And then three bears finally at the end are running and sprinting home. And we see this mad dash where there's so much movement in the picture because they are scared. And this book really focuses around the adventure of these three bears, the adventure that is out there in the world. Um, and it seems that they're excited to go. They are prepped to go. They have a flashlight. They have their stick. They have their rope. They know or at least they think they know what they're going to encounter in this adventure when they're going to investigate this spooky tree. And it seems like they're prepared for it. But really, they're not. They find out throughout the story that they're not prepared at all for what is in store for them in this story, in this adventure that they're going on. It really is an interesting contrast to what most children's books are, or what most people would expect children's books are, where there is a natural sense of color and of fun and easygoing and not facing a lot of danger. Even the danger in of itself doesn't usually seem that scary. But in this one, they're facing alligators and bears and bats, and they're in this dark, kind of haunted mansion-like tree. And they're really facing this adventure unprepared for what's going on. and it conveys a sense to most children as they're going through this of the danger that is sometimes out in the world when they're not prepared for it. And an interesting thing is they're alone in this adventure. They don't have their parents there. They don't have someone else to protect them. So it really communicates to children a sense of adventure is out there, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. And as we see later on in this series of picture books, there's still many more adventures to come. This doesn't stop the bears from adventuring, but they are given kind of a wake up call as to you need your parents there to help you with these things, and there's things out there in the world that are dangerous for the bears to encounter. And so this kind of life lesson of adventure can be fun and out there, but there's also a dangerous side of it. There can be danger to it is taught through this storybook.